Are you doing an intro?
Nope.
Okay.
This is all for you.
Oh, okay. Welcome back, Pack, and welcome into another video. And you'll never guess who I have with me. It's the leader of the pack. It's Mr. Pibbb himself. And this time we're doing it live on twitch.tv. So if you're watching this on YouTube, then you missed out on the action. And make sure you follow my Twitch channel that is down below so you can see these happen IRL in real time. It's crazy.
It is. It's crazy. It's fun. I don't know if you're going to be streaming your actual drafts. I wanted to tonight. Obviously, I won't be able to.
Yeah.
But, well, actually, I don't even know. I think today would have been the only one I could have. So I don't think so. But, yeah, you guys can watch Trevor over on twitch.tv/trademarkscasts.
Yeah.
Make fun of his picks. He's in a 12-team PPR, which is a lot harder. So you have to, like, the thing about 12 team versus 10 team is obviously 8 teams. I'm like, okay, every team in an 8 team is just going to be insanely good. 10 teams, it's like there's that mix of you have waivers and things that actually kind of make you win a championship. If your draft is messed up, then it like in a 12 team PPR, it's just insanely difficult to try and figure out what you're going to do in this season. Like you just have 2 entire extra rosters of, you know, the 14 picks that are taken away from you. So it actually makes it pretty difficult, especially like reaching wise.
Oh my God,
since you're at the end, you have 20 picks until your next pick. You have to make the decision on who to reach for because they won't come back to you ever.
All stuff that I talked about in the last video when I was pick 11, because that is my pick that I have in that 12-man draft. So it is awful because you have to look at the next 20 players that are on the board, and you have to start to decide how far am I going to reach for the guy that I want. And let me tell you, my roster wasn't that awful, but like the last 3 rounds of picks are worthless. It's all trade value. It's all insurance safety net. Like you just got to hope that you get something out of those last 2 rounds. But we'll get underway here with our 12-man draft. And Pibbb taking number 10. CMC goes first.
Wow. And then Eckler second over Jonathan Taylor. It's happening again.
This isn't as bad, but
at least it went pretty normally. I mean, those are the 6 running backs you expect and the 3 receivers you expect to go in the first 9. So
I'll let it.
You know, team 3 I'm sure is ecstatic because they're probably like, do I take Derrick Henry, Eckler? Do I go for a wide receiver?
Yeah.
And then in this they get Jonathan Taylor. They're like, okay,
done.
Yeah, I'm good for the rest of the draft. I have no worries anymore.
Yeah.
But on this pick, it's difficult because I am always an advocate for 2 running backs out of your first 3 rounds, just because there's so much receivers. Rounds 4, also like the dead zone of running backs is 4, 5, and 6. Like if I'm not taking a tight end quarterback in those rounds, it's only receiver I'm really taking. So that's why I want 2 early running backs, because I know in those middle rounds I'm just not taking a running back like Breece Hall who's going to split time on a terrible team, or Travis Etienne is like the only player in that entire range of running backs that I'm like, there's a lot of upside if he starts. If he doesn't start, and for some reason they keep saying it's James Robinson's backfield, you know, I have no idea. And that's why it's a dead zone, because if he's just splits time on the Jaguars, it's also the Breece Hall situation where it's not worth it. It's just not worth the time. But running backs to me right now is Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Kamara, kind of in that range. And, you know, 4 picks back to me, I think it's probably an easy Joe Mixon in my case, just because I know he'll be a workhorse again. It's only him and Samaje Perine is his backup. So he's going to get, you know, 300 touches again in receiving work. So yeah, Joe Mixon, who was scary for the last couple of seasons. I guess really it was just last season, and that was, or 2 seasons ago. And that was the season I had him. And he scarred me a little bit from then. But he is actually a very good running back. And he's on, obviously, which is a very prolific offense now. So,
yeah, great running back. In my pick 11, my last draft, I think Najee Harris fell to the 11th slot. So I was able to take Najee and then swing it around. But this is the trouble with like being in league this deep, right? Is that you're gonna look at all these skill players just disintegrate off the board just so fast. So like you gotta make a choice. Do you want a solid running back 1-2 with like a mediocre wide receiver 1, or do you want a pretty solid running back 1, wide receiver 1, and then mediocrity for number 2? And out of this, like I'm gonna take a player that is, you know, someone that's gonna be able to get a little bit of both ends of the spectrum and a double dip. So I'm going to take DeAndre Swift for my running back. And I'm going to look actually into a wide receiver field because I don't want to dip into a terrible situation. Well, am I? Am I?
While you make your decision, speaking on DeAndre Swift, I am still not a huge fan of his ADP. Like, as far as he's a great running back and he's got a lot of receptions, but he only got 150 carries last year and ran barely above 4 yards per carry. So for like a first rounder, it's still like kind of tough for me to want to take DeAndre Swift. But as far as the running backs go, I'm not taking Nick Chubb ever.
Nope.
I'm just not a fan of that. Kamara is someone who I've been targeting, of course, and Aaron Jones. But like with Aaron Jones, you can get AJ Dillon in the 6th or 7th round, who might have the same upside that Aaron Jones has. So, is it really worth a second round pick if you can get AJ Dillon in the 6th or 7th?
Yeah, and that's why I look at these two staring me in the face and the amount of points they put up. Same. I'm not really going to touch Chubb. I think that he's a good running back for what he is. Like, he does huge things on the ground, but
he's
it's just
incredibly good NFL running back.
Yes, he's just not a player that I really want to put on my fantasy roster. And I said I'd take a wide receiver. Yeah, Beef Brisket. He's not a bad quarterback, but he's not good. So
yeah. Essentially,
I'm gonna go down where the Saints go marching in. We'll take Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, that was going to be my pick if it made it back to me. But I have a pretty easy one now that CeeDee Lamb goes before me. And I saw this happen in my other draft as well. CeeDee going before Devontae Adams is insane to me.
Yeah.
I understand CeeDee Lamb's basically the only pass catcher on a very good Cowboys team.
What?
But he's still coming into his 3rd year. He hasn't been prolific, and Devontae Adams has been prolific his entire career. He's just insanely good. So I am struggling to understand that.
Yeah. See, Mark Andrews and Josh Allen both go in the 2nd round, and immediately swing it with the Kyle Pitts pick on pick number 2 for round 3. Williams out of Denver, Zeke's gone, Fournette's gone as well. Mike Evans, wide receiver 1 out of Tampa, T. Higgins out of there as well. A lot of people putting a lot of faith into T. Higgins as wide receiver 2 out of Cincinnati.
Dude,
we know that offense is good, but is it good enough to draft a wide receiver 2 in the 3rd round?
That's exactly my case on it. I'm very confused why people are so high on T. Higgins. You're literally drafting wide receiver 2 in the 3rd or 2nd round. It just does not make sense to me. And he'll get a similar stat line to someone like Brandon Cooks, who goes in the 6th or 7th round. I just don't understand what people are talking about for T. Higgins, because Jamar Chase is still going to be the number 1 by miles with how him and Burrow went to college together. They already have so much rapport together that T. Higgins isn't randomly going to come the wide receiver 1 this season. He could easily finish with 1,000 yards and 70 receptions, which is good, but you could get that in the 8th round this year. There's potential in receiver to just go deep. So yeah, I'm just as confused on T. Higgins as you are.
Yeah, my last video, I drafted a wide receiver 1 round 11, for a team. This is not a position you draft a wide receiver 2.
And this is my pick again. Tough decision. I'm not taking Mahomes or Herbert, of course. Just not worth it, in my opinion, when I can get someone like Michael Pittman that fell all the way to me at the end of the 3rd round, who has been rising. Kind of a 4th round. I started, 5th or 6th, and then Matt Ryan got announced, and everyone realized, this guy had a 1,000-yard season with Carson Wentz. This guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Michael Pittman, he's a 6'4", he's a big target in the end zone, so he'll be fantastic with Matt Ryan. And we know what Matt Ryan and specifically one receiver setups can do, so he will dominate with Matt Ryan, I think.
Yeah, and you talk about what Pittman did with that quarterback. You look at where that quarterback's gone now, Washington football team, or whatever they are now. Who cares? Scoring McLaurin, is right there at the top, just staring me in the face. Deontay Johnson up here as well, as wide receiver 1 up in Pittsburgh. And, it's one of those that, again, you could draft the wide receiver 1 for an okay team, but with Mitch Trubisky under the helm, I'm not really sold on it until they switch over to their rookie. And who knows how long that's going to take. That's just the quarterback controversy is going to make me shy away from any wide receivers in Pittsburgh entirely. So I just don't know how reliable they are. I had Pittman fall to me in my 3rd round pick in my last draft. So I took Pittman 3-11, and then I swung it with George Kittle actually in 4-2 for my last draft. So that was a nice little back-to-back for the receptions. But here I am, without either one of those available, I have to take 2 people that are going to catch the ball. And with all of my tight ends that I'm interested in off the board already, I'm not going to go for there. So I'm going to go with the scoring McLaurin first off, and I'm going to take another wide receiver 2nd, and it's going to have to be probably another wide receiver 1. This is a point where I may stretch to a wide receiver 2, and the only reason I say that is because it's on a damn good offense, and I'm looking now at the point where how far am I going to reach? And Allen Robinson staring me down there at wide receiver 2 is tempting.
Yeah, you have Mike Williams as another wide receiver too. Jalen Waddle, like there's a few wide receiver 2s in this area, which Jalen Waddle is obviously. I think I have similar vision with Jalen Waddle as I do with T. Higgins, where he's the number 2 receiver where there's a clear number 1. Like there's a one on that team that is going to get insane amount of work. And Jalen Waddle had a good season. I mean, I think the main part though was he had 100 receptions. That's just not going to happen this year with Tyreek Hill coming into the offense. I mean, Jalen Waddle's still going to be great, but like I said, it's just an ADP game, and for a 4th round pick, you need a wide receiver 1. These early picks are incredibly important, and I just don't think Jalen Waddle has that in him. So yeah, and it's a good point because I mean, like we said, you're gonna have 20 picks until your next one. So reaching for someone you want in the 4th is pretty important.
Yeah, and you put the emphasis there on, wide receiver 1, and of course, Robinson being number 2, yeah, it's a good offense, but like, if Cooper Kupp goes down, I mean, the amount of targets Kupp is going to get, is just going to make him that much more prone to getting hit, so there's the injury risk there as well. Allen Robinson, we know what he was able to do in Chicago in a terrible offense. That's going to produce statistics. On the other side, you look at wide receiver 1s, for the longest time, with the great quarterback under the helm, don't get me wrong, Matt Stafford in Detroit was phenomenal, and Megatron did amazing things. Now Seattle with a not great quarterback core has a monster of a wide receiver in DK Metcalf as a wide receiver 1, and that man is a man that's going to get the ball regardless of who's around them or the coverage on him. So it's kind of a bait and switch. Like, do you take that wide receiver 1 because there is not? I mean, Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 2 is going to get some openings. They don't really have a tight end. They don't really have a running back core. Like, no one knows who's starting out of these 3 running backs between Penny, Walker, and Homer. Like, that's going to be all eyes on DK Metcalf. So now you have to look, is that going to be worth the attention on the defense? Is it going to make the productivity in the offense? And I'm going to take the risk. I think DK Metcalf is going to have enough of an upside on it. I will happily take wide receiver 1 in Seattle, even with the worst 2 quarterbacks I've ever seen.
and that's the thing with the Seattle offense is you could probably get a steal of a pick later in the draft. I mean, DK dropping in the 4th round, maybe to the 5th round, Tyler Lockett, of course, later. Like, I know Geno Smith and Drew Lock aren't exactly your best candidates, but he's going to get a decent amount of targets, and he's still going to be great. So I've yet to actually draft DK Metcalf, but that is an interesting choice there because I still love someone who I'm going to take now, but well, like I said at the beginning of this video, I was like, I'm a fan of 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, and it ended up coming back to me to where it's just not worth it for me to get a running back because of how much value there was at wide receiver. And it's in the same situation again where I don't want Cam Akers because I can get Darrell Henderson in the 12th round. I don't want David Montgomery because him and Khalil Herbert might even split time, and David Montgomery wasn't very efficient last season, even though he had a couple of great weeks, and just one of the worst offenses in football on top of that. Travis Etienne's like one of the guys I was saying that I could think about, but I'm just cool with taking a running back later in the draft as my running back too, and it might have to be one of those guys that's just a pass catching option like Kareem Hunt or something, or Cordell Patterson, where my running backs aren't going to be great, but my receivers in a PPR league will be absolutely fantastic. And in this case, I'm going to take DJ Moore. I just think Baker is a huge improvement from Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was absolutely miserable. And DJ Moore still had 163 targets last season. So he will be in a similar setup again with a better offense. And he's only received 4 touchdowns in 3 of the, in all the last 3 years. So realistically, there can only be some improvements on that. And he's 6 foot. He's a good size. So I think him and Baker could have some good solid stat lines.
The other one I was looking at was DJ Moore because, exactly all the stats you just brought up, he's going to be able to produce more theoretically. And in the same argument of DK Metcalf, there's not a lot going on outside of him and wide receiver 1. Robbie Anderson's not bad per se, but you don't have a wide receiver 3. You don't have a tight end. Like, we know the name Tommy Tremble, but outside of that, you got CMC. And it's like those are the 2 guys that are going to produce. So even more so than Seattle, like there's at least someone else on the offense of Carolina that's going to do something, but good pick and more. You see Montgomery, Jalen Waddle go. Patty Ice goes early in the 4th round. Cam Akers, Breece Hall going. Josh Jacobs, of course, running back 1 out of Vegas now. Etienne goes. Still a mixed up backfield in Jacksonville. Cortland Sutton, Waller goes. And we talked about Waller as well and the workload that he's going to have that drops because of Yoo-Hoo up there, Devontae Adams. Mike Williams going follow. Gibson, Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. Burrow going before Lamar Jackson. How you feel about that?
Yeah, that's painful. I know Burrow's like he was incredibly good, but there's just no running upside. And while you're gonna have 30 touchdowns in Joe Burrow, someone like Lamar who's gonna throw maybe 20, same with Kyler, maybe 25, but they're gonna have insane rushing upside. It's especially when in Baltimore their running back room is atrocious, and they picked up Kenyon Drake on top of the atrocity.
Yeah.
It's just going to be Lamar Jackson all the way, which also adds on to my next pick now, which someone I have never drafted in a mock draft. But because they dropped Trey Sermon and they hyped up this team, and I just don't like the other running backs for a long time here, I'm going to solidify, hopefully, with Elijah Mitchell. It's so tough to predict the 49ers backfield. And they actually... I forgot the name of who it was, but they released Trey Sermon, who they said was insane in training camp because a rookie undrafted running back was so good for them that they wanted to keep him on the roster. So that was something I was a little bit scared of picking Elijah Mitchell now in the 5th round, is he might just not end up starting. And if he's unhealthy, of course, that will be a problem too. But as far as the other running backs in that backfield, it is pretty much Elijah Mitchell should get a majority of that carry time in there.
He's the guy there, for sure. Staring me in the excuse me. Staring me in the face, Kyler Murray. You know, I've had Kyler Murray on my fantasy teams before, and decent quarterback for what it is. He does a lot with the ball. He runs the ball a lot, and he passes a decent amount as well. Had that, of course, stint down in the middle of the season where he sat out for a while. But I mean, look at these points that he was able to put up was a ton. The only reason I was really comfortable to have Kyler on my roster is because I also had running back 1 at Arizona in Drake. So, like, I had them starting QB1, running back 1 every week because I was guaranteed to get the rushing touchdowns from Arizona every time. And that's the only reason I was comfortable with Kyler Murray being my quarterback, because I knew for sure I would get that. Now with James Conner up there, I don't have that anymore. I don't have that safety net, so I'm not going to draft Kyler out of this position. I'm still going to look at skill points and who's going to be taking positional points, receptions. And this is a point now where we got to start to look at how far am I going to reach, because this is that awkward mid-zone, round 5, round 6, where I want something that's going to be able to hold over. Michael Thomas is up here. Chris Godwin, you know, another wide receiver 2 in a solid offense, even with the questionable tag for both of those players. Brandon Cooks, you know, wide receiver 1. Again, I talked about it in my last video. Just got to have faith in Turtleneck, and I don't know how much I do. Davis Mills is a quarterback.
Yep.
He is a quarterback.
He is.
So I think I'm gonna go 1 for each of flavors this time around.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take Miles Sanders from my first pick, and then I'm gonna swing it to a wide receiver following that. I mean, granted, Cordero Patterson's here. I know you talked about him. He'll probably fall enough to, you know, go to you, but I'm gonna have to go to a position of a wide receiver where I know I'm going to get something I want out of this, and I'm still looking wide receiver 1, and it's not going to be Brandon Cooks down in Houston. I don't have faith in the turtleneck, but I do have faith in Mr. Goff, who is incredibly washed up anymore, but I will take Amon-Ra St. Brown easily. Oh,
and Team 11 has 5 receivers, man. Give me a break.
No one.
You don't need another one.
Oh, man.
Obviously, I would love Brandon Cooks. Speaking of Miles Sanders, I have Miles Sanders as one of my bench options in the leagues I've drafted already.
No,
no, it's fine. I actually don't care. You can. I don't actually want Brandon Cooks, so you can.
All right, I'll leave
keep
it.
Brandon Cooks.
All right,
there,
I'll leave
it. But
I was trying to get him to running back, but Jesus.
Still kind of scared of Miles Sanders, and even though he's incredibly good, they picked up Trey Sermon on top of it. Dude, it's going to be 4 running backs in that room in which Miles Sanders should get all the carries, but won't. And as a running back 3, of course, I think it's totally fine, because if he actually does start to get production and be a normal running back, then it's totally fine. And I think it's a great pick. And why I have him on my bench spot in one of those leagues, because I believe in him. I think as a player, he's very good, and the talent is there. It's just they love Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott for some reason. And now I've picked up Trey Sermon, who's a larger back, which is probably going to take goal line work if Jalen Hurts already didn't.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, running backs, I'm going to wait, which might really hurt. Oh, I don't know if I can wait. That's the problem now with how many picks are in front of me, is I don't know if I can wait, because I'd like Kareem Hunt probably here, because I know Jacoby Brissett will probably just dump off a lot to that position, but their offense still won't be that good. So how much I actually think that makes more sense for Kareem Hunt to be in more because they're not going to be running the ball as much if they're not winning. They're going to be trying to get Kareem Hunt some passing work. And so I feel like that gives me some more upside for Kareem Hunt.
Right.
I also have a couple later guys that, as a running back 3, I'd love. And Dameon Pierce, Chase Edmonds, of course, Ramondre Stevenson, who... This is why I'm not drafting Damian Harris here, is because I want Ramondre later.
Yeah.
Because Ramondre is going to have, obviously, talked so many about it, but James White role as a 6-foot running back, like, he's just going to be insanely valuable, especially if Damian Harris is not that great or if they just really like how Ramondre Stevenson's playing. Because last year, he was very efficient. So him getting some receptions could make him even better.
Yeah.
But I also could have taken quarterback here, because the rest of the ones I will like are going to go. There's 4 quarterbacks taken in front of me already, so that means only 5 teams could take a quarterback, which means probably all the way down through Brady I would miss out on. And then as far as value goes, I really love the value of quarterbacks right in this area, but I know they won't drop back to me. So it's actually a tough decision. I think I'm going to pass on receivers specifically in this point because I have 3 that are interchangeable that I will play every week. So I'm not looking for a 4th incredible receiver here. I can wait to get someone in the next round that still has some upside that I can kind of just sit on my bench, and if they start popping off, then can find a spot for them.
Yep.
And I think it's tough, but I am going to go... I'm going to go with Kyler Murray here. I think I'm going to go with the early quarterback. I was trying to decide if I wanted Jalen Hurts over Kyler, just because I think Jalen Hurts will be much better with A.J. Brown, and his running upside is obviously definitely there. But Kyler had similar running upside with maybe a little bit better of the passing touchdown upside. So I like Kyler Murray in the 6th round because I know, like you see there, all the rest of the quarterbacks down to Dak went in front of me. Yeah. So every other team in front of me took a quarterback.
Yeah, we're going to see in round 9, round 10, the AI actually starts drafting like second quarterbacks and second tight ends, which is so annoying. I dealt with it the last game, and I had to, or my last draft, and I actually had to manually change it so that I could get the quarterback because I think it ended up being like the team drafted like Tom Brady, Matt Stafford. And it's like, you're not going to have those 2 quarterbacks ever. So I just changed it. I gave myself Matt Stafford. You're ridiculous. Get out of here. Same though, looking at a lot of these wide receivers, in place of Sanders or Brown, if you're not, wanting either one of those, I would say avoid Hollywood Brown. Yes, he's going to do well for the first 6 weeks, but like 7 draft picks later is the guy that's going to replace him, and that's D-Hop. So you could get that early season pressure. Hope that Hollywood Brown pops off, bait someone into a trade, and get value out of him, and then D-Hop is going to, do some work. So if you get the Hollywood Brown D-Hop stack, you are set. Just make sure you trade Hollywood Brown like by week 4. But looking at that, true. Looking at other alternatives out of that, Gabe Davis, is going to be a huge pass catcher out there in Buffalo as well. Dallas Goedert, I don't know about the draft, but it's just a safety net in Philly, so he's still a good tight end. He's still going to produce something.
I took him in a mock draft, and I still don't really know how he'll be. He's huge though. He's 6'5".
Yeah.
Obviously AJ Brown kind of in the mix there, but it's tough because with the addition of AJ Brown, does that mean Dallas Goedert's just an even safer option at tight end because he actually has some other options that can be covered and he'll be wide open instead? Yeah,
and this is if it did fall back to me at the point, Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders would be a great stack for me to have. I'd love to have that if Hurts does come back around after 20 picks. I don't ever expect it to happen, but you took Kareem Hunt out of this one. Again, as you talk about, the pass catcher out of Cleveland, is going to try to get some more points out of that. I can't expect we'll see Kareem of old out of Kansas City, but he's there to produce something for you, right?
Yeah, I hope so. And obviously, I took Kareem Hunt as my next pick. I could not believe he came back to me. A lot of wide receivers ended up going, and obviously 5 teams took quarterbacks, so that was like the perfect end-all be-all right there for me. Is like I wanted to secure a quarterback, and it was the decision of, do I get Kareem Hunt here or just kind of get a quarterback? And I got a quarterback, and Kareem Hunt came back to me. So mock draft could have gone better there for those 2 rounds at least.
Yeah, and this is where, now I talked about this in my last video as well. You look at wide receiver 2s and offenses that are not great. Tyler Lockett, I'm going to avoid at all costs because I have wide receiver 1 out of there.
You don't want DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett?
Absolutely not. I don't think Tyler Lockett's going to do anything with either one of those quarterbacks under center.
Either.
So you avoid the wide receiver 2s.
They're not going to be able to hit him that far.
No. You avoid the wide receiver 2 on a mediocre offense at all costs. So Lockett's out of this one. Devontae Smith is in contention. I'm not going to take a rookie in Drake London. I'm not going to take Hunter Renfrow. I don't think that wide receiver 2 is going to be enough, even with the safety net from Devontae Adams and Darren Waller and Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
Like, there's a lot going on in that offense, and it's not going to be enough for me to draft Renfrow, even after what happened, with their wide receiver core. I mean, Ruggs obviously just disappearing off the face of the earth for good reason. That offense was just way
and they
too...
traded Bryan Edwards as well.
Way too volatile. There was too much going on in that offense, and that's why Darren Waller just got everything. Now I feel like they're actually like calming down the Raiders offense, and it's going to make more sense. So looking at what I have here, I'm going to swing it again. I'm going to go with another running back wide receiver duo. This time I'm going to take wide receiver number uno out of Green Bay. Take Allen Lazard for this one.
Yep.
And then looking at running backs, I'm going to stretch for this one because I know it's not going to come back to me. We're going to take a running back 1. I don't care. Okay, so before I get into this, I know that I've talked about Seattle's running backs. I have a lot of hate for both of them because, like, no one knows who's starting. And look at their ADP. They're like 6 picks apart. And if you have 2 running backs starting to get drafted 6 picks apart, then it's just not worth either one. Like, it's a risk on both teams, whoever drafts them, because it's not going to get stacked up on the same team. I would avoid Seattle's running backs unless you get it on a swing like this, late rounds. I just wouldn't touch either one of these. But now I just have to decide, do I want Dameon Pierce or do I want Chase Edmonds?
And also, on top of the Seattle thing, they're starting to say that Rashad Penny is like the confirmed starter. Kenneth Walker's recovering from a hernia. And if you're drafting Kenneth Walker before Penny, stop doing that. And second of all, he's a rookie, so he might just struggle and be really bad. And both these guys struggle with injury, but Rashad Penny was like incredible at the end of last season. He ran for 6.5 yards per carry with one of the worst offensive lines in football. So if Rashad Penny can do it again, I mean, that would be a pick later in the draft, not, I would say, heavily clear of Kenneth Walker, though, in this situation.
Yeah, so I'm just going to avoid Seattle's backfield altogether. I think I'm actually going to go for what I think has a better upside just as a team overall. Houston is notoriously terrible. They're awful. Football team altogether.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm going to go with Chase Edmonds out of this one just because I know Miami is at least a 500 team. They're going to be in contention for at least a wild card spot. And I think with that late season, now you got to start thinking like all the way forward to playoffs, right? Like when it comes week 16, week 17, that's a playoff time for fantasy football. Chase Edmonds is still going to be in the game because I feel like Miami's going to be trying to fight for a playoff spot.
And I actually, just looking at these picks here, I actually really like Hunter Renfrow. I know he's kind of the third target on the offense, but it makes it a lot easier for Derek Carr to be able to spread the ball around because, like we mentioned, they had a lot of just kind of weird and trash receivers, and so it was only Darren Waller getting that action. Now they have Devontae Adams. Darren Waller will still be the same player, still get a decent amount, but even with Waller having an incredible season and now Devontae Adams, who's going to hoard targets, the Raiders still lost a decent amount of targets elsewhere, and Bryan Edwards, obviously Henry Ruggs. Those are two receivers that were kind of vying for wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. And Renfrow had 100 receptions last season, which obviously will go down. But as a 4th receiver on my team, I couldn't complain. And I just do not like the rest of the receivers as far as what it goes down to at the end of this one. Devonta Smith is an interesting option as a wide receiver too, because obviously if AJ Brown ever has a tough time or ever has some any down weeks, which he did last season, he was out for a couple weeks of the season. Dude, Devonta Smith gets incredible value as a wide receiver 2 with Jalen Hurts. So wide receiver could be an interesting choice here, and it's just what will fall back to me. And obviously there's going to be a lot of wide receivers. Rashad Penny is someone I already talked about. Dameon Pierce, who would be right about now, you'd probably start to take him. People are, I think he's getting a lot of hype. So that's the scary part is he might be overhyped, just be absolutely terrible on a terrible team, and that's the end of that story. But as your running back 4, it's kind of okay there. As far as the rest of the running backs go, I just don't like what would fall to me though if I didn't take Rashad Penny or Dameon Pierce here. And Rashad Penny is someone who I've never mock drafted him, but now starting to read the news, starting to come around on it a little bit, even though that is also going to be one of the worst offenses in football in Seattle because of their terrible offensive line. That being said, Rashad Penny still ran for 6 yards a carry with a terrible offensive line. That just kind of proves when he's healthy, he's pretty good, but that when he's healthy part is the sketchy part. So I'm actually just I think I'm going to go with Hunter Renfrow here as my 4th receiver. Just go with the solidified receiver because I just don't really like the rest around that area. So I think I can get another running back in the next round that hopefully I'll just be okay with.
Yeah, and a lot of those running backs, we just talked about. Walker gone, Penny gone, Singletary as well, Pierce and Stevenson
as well.
Both back-to-backs right there. And I see, again, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford get stacked up. For some reason, I understand the Aaron Rodgers pick there. Like, that's your quarterback. You don't have a quarterback yet. That one makes sense. But this is not going to happen ever. So, No, you're not doing that either.
Yep, Trey Lance.
You're not doing that either. You're not doing that. All right. We're just going to change this manually. You're going to get Chris Olave.
They probably would actually pick Chris Olave there as well. Fourth receiver for that team. So that kind of makes sense. But yeah, I agree. I don't understand why they start to take second quarterbacks when there's still a lot of value. Like Chris Olave is second receiver on the Saints offense. I would have taken him potentially here in this situation, but he obviously did not fall to me. And Hunter Renfrow gone. I am sad. I for some reason forgot about Ramondre Stevenson, even though I was hyping him up, and I was like, yeah, this is the guy I want later in the draft, and then completely forgot about him at my pick, and I guess kind of was hoping he'd fall back to me. But I have a running back I probably want, and now this is a situation where Michael Carter, splitting time, could be the starter. Who knows? Melvin Gordon, splitting time, not going to be the starter. James Robinson, splitting time, no idea if he's a starter or not, but it's the Jaguars. Madison's just a really good handcuff. He's a pretty good running back, but as a handcuff, I don't really want a handcuff as my fourth running back. I'd rather have it much later in the draft potentially. So some ideas here. Receivers, I think, will come back to me as far as ones that I'll probably end up taking a look at. So I'm just going to take what I think is good here. Darrell Henderson.
No.
It is the ninth. It might be a little early, but I need some solidified running back, and him and Cam Akers both splitting injury time. If whoever's on the field will get a lot of value, though.
All right. I'm going to change that pick right there because Team 11 has one running back yet, and they're not going to draft a second quarterback. It's like you're not drafting QB2 before a running back 2. It's not going to happen. So they get Tony Pollard, Melvin Gordon as running back 1-2.
I would throw up if that was my 2 running backs. I'd just actually quit the league. I'd be like, yeah, I'll see you next year. I'm just not even going to bother.
You got to look for some trade value up here in the 7 wide receivers they've drafted to find a running back.
There's value there.
There's not. There's really not. Team 11's in shambles. You want
my Deontay Johnson for Dameon Pierce? That might even be a close trade, but
oh my Lord.
That's rough.
Yeah, Team 11's not having a good time. And I'm going to do this just because I don't have to. And it's the same thing that happened last draft. I'm going to draft a quarterback just because I don't want to keep dealing with the AI being obnoxious. Right. So I'll just go ahead and I'll take my QB now. And I'm going to take Matt Stafford just because it's arguably it's a QB1 all season long. It's not going to change. Trey Lance might change at some point through the year, and I don't want to take that risk. I'm going to draft one quarterback. I'm going to be happy with one quarterback, and I'm not going to draft 2 like any of these other 9 bozos. All right, now I'm off that soapbox. I look at, again, looking to what's going to fall to me. I'm just going to take a gander at some tight ends here.
I just want to speak on the Darrell Henderson thing, by the way, is like 9th, 10th round. I would suggest reaching for him. Because there's no good running backs in this area. And a lot of your league mates are going to start looking around, be like, what do I like here? And they're going to be like, oh, I've heard of Darrell Henderson. That kind of rings a bell. And he's on the Super Bowl winning team. So they're going to be like, oh, I kind of like that. And I just, Cam Akers coming off an Achilles injury where he looked absolutely miserable in the playoffs, but of course it's Achilles injury. I'm surprised he even played last season at the end, but it's still like Cam Akers is prolific, but if they're splitting time, even getting a splitting time running back on what was the best team in football last year is totally okay to reach for, in my opinion.
Yeah, I did that in my last draft as well. I think right around here somewhere between 8 and 10 went for Henderson. And I'm just looking at flex positions this time around. I don't really like the tight end room at all. I feel like the last draft was a lot better with the tight ends. Oh, that's because I drafted Kittle like round 3.
Kittle's tough one for me. I had him. I think it was last season where he started a decent amount of games, but was out here and there and was out. In this one, a 3rd round tight end, I don't know how I feel necessarily about that because I still don't know how good Trey Lance is. Yeah. It's still tough for me to decide, but it's interesting.
If we're falling this far, though, I'm still looking at positional players that it's going to produce points. And now that I didn't have to worry about tight end in my pick 11 slot. I do have to worry about it here. I'm looking at what's going to fall to me, and I think it's, everybody and their mother has a tight end already. was looking at the idiots that are drafting 2 tight ends, like Team 5 and Team 9.
Dallas Goedert and Zachary. That's an Eagles fan from like a couple seasons ago when they were both on the same team. He's like, oh, I miss these guys.
Oh, the dynamic duo.
Both.
That's like, oh, good Lord. Yeah, so I'm not going to touch a tight end right now. I'm still looking at wide receiver value. I'm looking at wide receiver ones, and I'm just going to take Kadarius Toney out of this. He's, the guy in New York. It's going to be an easy one. Yeah, you can have Trey Lance. I don't care. Whatever. I'm not changing it.
Trey Lance. Now I have to decide if I want to tight end because otherwise there's going to be very little. And
there's nothing on the board.
At running backs, like I said, I reach for the guy I want. I don't like any of the rest, so I'm cool with 4 running backs right now.
Yeah,
At receiver, there's guys that could go in the 12th round that could still be insane value. And I'm not very interested. So I think I'm going to go tight end. Obviously, I talked about it. Gesicki. Apparently, they're moving him to a blocking tight end as well as maybe even just trading him out of Miami. So whatever Mike McDaniel saw to Gesicki, he's just like, yeah, I'm not having it for Gesicki, even though he's been a pretty good receiving tight end for the last couple of seasons. They are just not about it. So I'm going to go with Cole Kmet here. I have him in one of my leagues already. He's like, as far as the late rounds go, one of the only values at tight end I see that could probably finish in the top 5 because Justin Fields has got nothing there to hit besides Darnell Mooney. And Cole Kmet is 6'6". Like, that dude is massive. So he is going to be an end zone target if they make it towards the end zone. So Cole Kmet's my pick there.
Imagine having Travis Kelce on your roster and drafting Tyler Higbee. Like, in what world are you ever going to... Like, these are the players that are looking at the rosters of the rest of the league and see, this guy doesn't have a tight end. Let's draft everyone, and we're going to try to trade him for it. And I'm not desperate enough to trade anything for a Tyler Higbee or... Zach Ertz.
I think he's someone who's gone under my radar a little bit, though. I think it's because the Allen Robinson news.
Yeah.
People just think there's like too many good receivers. But this was the same setup with Robert Woods, where Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods would get 100 receptions each. And Tyler Higbee still looked pretty good. And now they have Matthew Stafford. I feel like Tyler Higbee's a decent.
He's not a bad tight end.
That I haven't really been thinking about whatsoever. Like, he's not even been in my board. Now I'm like, oh, that's pretty good value for late 11th round pick.
I was looking for him. I was going to look at him to draft him, but a team that has Travis Kelce decided they needed Higbee also. So
of course,
we'll let it
Makes
ride.
Sense.
I hate this league.
Let's ride, as my favorite player once said.
You're dumb. You're so dumb.
I do not like the rest of everything that's happening currently, though. I have 4 receivers, 4 running backs, so these picks from here on out are kind of just whatever I feel is.
This is where you draw the line.
Worth the value.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping that Valdez-Scantling maybe made it to me. Michael Gallup's even a good consideration because, yes, he's coming back off of bad injury, but they didn't put him on the PUP list, which means like he has a chance to start a couple, maybe third, second week, and he's the number 2 receiver without a doubt, and they paid him as such. So he will still be used a lot on a good offense. So that's someone I would pick there. In front of me is like Jarvis Landry. I'm just not a huge fan. The number 1 thing says Jarvis Landry is the favorite target of Winston, which couldn't that be a shock to everybody?
Right.
Randomly, Landry becomes the wide receiver 1 over Chris Olave and Michael Thomas.
Right.
But yeah, I would never take Landry. I'd always take Olave in that case. If I'm taking like a chance, it's going to be the very young, very stouted receiver, Chris Olave, who's a good size as well. Of course, you could go for someone like Romeo Doubs, who's had the fantasy football hype around him, where people just think he's the second coming of Christ. And he's out of Nevada, so out of my college. So, shouts out to him. He was a 4th round pick, but I just don't know why he's being like Rodgers is never going to throw to him. Rodgers is going to see that he's a rookie. He's like, I'm going to look somewhere else.
Exactly.
Like, he just hates rookies. So people got to put that in the back of their mind.
He's a rookie wide receiver. He's also second cut of wide receiver 3. Like, Sammy Watkins is going to be over it. Yeah, it's bad pick. I wouldn't advise it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tough choices here. I think I'm just going to wait, and I'm going to try and just take some running back backup value. I'm going to take Brian Robinson, of course, after the terrible news. He's going to be on the PUP list for the first 4 weeks, but he was the running back 1 potentially going into the season, and obviously with that bad news, he's out for 4 weeks, potentially maybe a little bit more than that, but I have 4 running backs in front of him, so I just hate the rest of the running backs down here, so I'll take a potential starter in the 11th round.
Well, that was my tight end right there, Hunter Henry. And
and Team 11 doesn't. You can't even change.
Team 11
that, 'cause
doesn't
that's
have a
his
tight
only
end because they don't have one. So like,
Oh,
Higbee should not have been picked. Team 11 probably should have drafted Higbee or Henry, and then the other one would be falling to me. So instead, I look at this.
listen, David Njoku is
Njoku's not bad
is
with it.
a very good value.
He's
I
a
think.
great 6 to 7 points a week. And you know what? That's
Listen, every
more
tight
than
end
zero.
from past like Pitts is 6 to 7 points a week.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's why it's fine to get a late tight end. I'm just
Yeah.
totally okay with getting late tight ends.
Like, so theoretically, I should have either Higbee or Henry on my roster, which is both tight end 1 in their respective rosters. Neither one of them have any competition whatsoever. It's okay with that. You know, Mac Jones is a very conservative
Listen,
type.
I say you could veto the Higbee pick if you wanted to.
I could. I already let it ride once. I'm gonna let it go.
Fair enough.
So I'll end up drafting Njoku just because I don't want to deal with AI anymore. They're just annoying. And then I'll look at, you know, what else I have going in here. And if I look now, okay, this is, you know, we talk about round 10, round 11s where we're drawing the line, especially in the 12-team league. You draw the line here as to what everything else is. And it's all trade value. It's all waiver wires. It's all just safety net insurances. And because of that, to immediately follow up that pick, I'm going to take my insurance. I'm taking Gainwell out of Philly. So I have that stack in the backfield.
Yep, and that's a fine pick. Another tight end pick I was thinking of is Irv Smith Jr. for the Minnesota offense. He's not been the healthiest last year, but last couple of years, I should say. But he is 24, he's very young, and the Minnesota offense, passing-wise, is insanely good. So as a late choice, even if he's like the third or fourth option, he's still going to get a decent amount every week, and that's kind of all you're expecting at the end of this one. Like I said, Cole Kmet is one of those guys where I'm targeting simply because he's the only other option besides Darnell Mooney. And if you're like, oh, it's Darnell Mooney or a new tight end, you're already like, why would you want him part of that offense? Well, because he can't throw anywhere else. So Cole Kmet and he's huge, 6'6", is a reason why I picked him as well. But yeah, these picks are hard, and this is where the late rounds of the draft, a lot of people just leave. They're like, yeah, I'm just not going to deal with these. I'll pick people off the waivers because these are some tough picks to try and decide where there is value or if there is value. Yeah. And I just don't know if there is.
Any dimes.
Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs is like, they are still both kind of vying for a spot. They haven't even locked in. Like, Randall Cobb's still there, and I think people are forgetting that. Like, Randall Cobb and Aaron Rodgers, you know, they got history. They got a lot of history together. Yeah. And Randall Cobb was very good. So, you know, that's something interesting. And he's just going. He hasn't been picked yet, right? I'm trying to figure out Randall Cobb's ADP. Yeah, he's 200 right now, and he's currently situated as the wide receiver 2 on that team. So I get it, he's old and there's no upside, but he is kind of the second target there. But I'm going to go for someone who I actually got at the one of the final rounds, one of my later into the draft, Jacoby Myers. Ooh. He's one of the guys I picked up off of waivers last season, and he was very good. He's a very solid receiver. He just never really got touchdowns, and I think that changes this season. I think Mac Jones going to second year is going to be a bit better. I think the whole offense going to be a bit better. I know they got Devontae Parker, but Jacoby Myers and Mac Jones had a lot of success together, so he's one of those guys that I've been targeting in the late rounds.
I feel the complete opposite because I had him on my roster last year, and like, he had the reception.
Yeah, he's just very average.
Yeah, like he wasn't a breakout all-star wide receiver, and he just, you know, comparatively to the wide receivers I had on roster, he didn't perform. So, like, I was rather disappointed with his performance, but a 12th round pickup, like you said, the rapport's already there. Him and Mac Jones are only just going to get better from there. But the addition of Devontae Parker is certainly going to add the question mark into that one. I'm kind of surprised to see Myers actually go before Devontae Parker. I feel like Devontae Parker probably could have gone in place of somebody up top because that is a wide receiver 1 for New England. And to see it go at 12-12 is kind of surprising to drop this far. But looking, Irv Smith does go. Justin Fields goes as well. Who cares? Quarterback. You have 2 quarterbacks now. Whatever. Why? I think Ronald Jones out of Kansas City is not going to do anything. Even more so, Pacheco, who just got announced to be making the cut of the 53-man roster barely in Kansas City. Worth drafting, okay, but it's not going to get any playtime over Jones or Clyde. McKissick just as well. I get it for now until McKissick.
Oh, I thought you were talking about McKinnon. I thought you were talking about the Kansas City backfield. No. So I was like, it's McKinnon back there.
I transferred to McKissick.
Got it. Yeah.
For the time being, you get value out of it until Robinson comes back in this, you know, and starts to mix up that backfield once more. But these are again just all late game picks that yeah, who knows what they're going to do, if anything at all. Rondé Moore, though, is the one that I'd say, again, just the same as looking at what Hollywood Brown's going to do. First 4 or 5 weeks, hope that he blows up and provides trade value for you, because once D-Hop comes back, that player's worthless, dead in the ground.
Very true. Very true. And obviously, they got rid of Christian Kirk. Rondé Moore was kind of competing for that secondary role on that team against Christian Kirk. But, I mean, there's still better options. Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz, even AJ Green, who was once coveted as, one of the best receivers in the NFL for a little bit. It just hasn't been lately. But, he's still there as well. And AJ Green's a good target, a big target.
Yeah.
But he still had some rapport with Kyler Murray. So, yeah, the Cardinals' offense is tough. And that's why I've been specifically targeting only D-Hop. Because I'll have 3, maybe 4 receivers before D-Hop, and I can have him sit on my bench forever. And if he comes back and he's fantastic, cool, slot him in. If he's not, see you later. Like, it's no big deal to me.
Yep. Now,
and also, I took Jamal Williams.
Yeah, Jamal Williams, another...
Basically taking a handcuff, but also a handcuff that played a decent amount last season, so...
I did that in my last draft. My pick 11 draft, I ended up with DeAndre Swift again, that I took in the first round, and then... 11th round, I also took Jamal Williams. Just again, in the same concept of Gainwell and Miles Sanders. Just having that safety net, just in case something were to happen to that first string. And of course, he can't be on the field all the time. This one, I'm really excited because it's slowly starting to trickle up, and it's one of my players that I've really been keeping an eye on. It's been going undrafted in most of our, actually, if not all of ours. Mock drafts that we've done together. It's slowly been creeping up. I've been talking about wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s on offenses that are not good. But you look at this position, and being on an offense that's phenomenal, is producing a lot, and has done so much out of a slot position. Wide receiver 3 out of Buffalo. Isaiah McKenzie has got such a huge upside, is going to be able to do so much on this. And I have high hopes that this offense is going to be the number 1 offense in the NFL this league. I think Isaiah McKenzie is going to provide a huge value. And the fact that I get him round 13, round 14, every time, yes. 100% yes. I'm so happy he fell back to me. And now with my throwaway pick, I don't even care. I could look at Matt Ryan, and because we know Indianapolis' offense is going to do all right. And I just have that for trade value. If I want to be one of those idiots that just has 2 quarterbacks for no reason, but I'm going to do nothing other than potentially trade one or the other. Yeah. Obviously, it'd be much more rather to trade Matt Ryan. So I think the Rams are going to do better than the Colts are.
Stafford's got the elbow injury, though. You never know.
True.
They've talked about it being a concern now all year, which I think it's been lingering for a while. I think something Stafford has kind of been working with, but now it's starting to make concerns, which is interesting because I feel like I've heard this story before in a couple other seasons where it's like, oh, Matthew Stafford's elbow is acting up again, and then he throws for 30 touchdowns. You're like, okay, well, all right, well, I think he's all right.
Maybe not, yeah. He's just one of the toughest players in the NFL. Matt Stafford is. Like, he's got true grit, and no one can take that away from him. So, I very arguably could take a backup quarterback here just to be safe if I really wanted to. I could look at more trade value. I mean, I have 6 of each, pretty much. I got 6 receivers and 5 running backs out of this. So, it wouldn't be bad necessarily to take that. Of course, we're not doing kickers or defenses in this. But again, round 14, this pick doesn't even matter. So I'm just going to scroll and I'm going to draft this guy.
If Tim Patrick comes back this season, he was a big target, but he did just go through a knee surgery.
He's on the IR. Yep.
So we'll see if he actually comes back at any point. A great pick, though.
Thanks.
Something I was going to talk about with McKenzie. They lost their slot receiver, Cole Beasley. That is, he would randomly just show up and have big weeks. And they also lost Emmanuel Sanders, which is why Gabe Davis is getting so much hype now, is because there's no other options. Now that Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley are gone, that's a lot of targets out of Buffalo. So Gabe Davis is getting a lot of hype, but as a potential slot receiver, McKenzie will also get a lot of work. And for value that late, definitely fine, because if Gabe Davis doesn't turn out, or Stephon Diggs, if either one of them takes an injury, McKenzie's the wide receiver 2 on one of the best offenses in football. So I like that pick a lot. And now it's back to me. I got, oh, heck yeah, man.
There you go. I got my backup.
Wait, Josh Love.
Yeah. It's not Jordan. It's Josh.
Oh, and he's released from the Panthers practice squad. You got to be terrible. I'm sorry, Josh. I don't mean that. But I have a mix of everything. I got 5 receivers. I think I have 5 running backs as well. Kind of just shooting in the dark here, like you said.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's not a lot of value. If there is, I think it's potentially with Raheem Mostert. So I'm going to take Raheem Mostert here just as like
Fair.
maybe a guy later in the draft where he could be a running back 2. He could split time. He could maybe be 1, especially with Chase Edmonds, who did have some injury history if he goes down.
Yep.
Obviously, another guy with injury history is Mostert. But when Mostert's on the field, he was incredibly good. So if that injury didn't set him back too much, he should still be pretty good.
Yeah. So thus concludes the draft. A tight end being Mr. Irrelevant, Mr. Everett out of the Los Angeles Chargers. Great. That's tight end 1 for the Chargers, apparently. Had no idea.
Well, yeah, with Parham, who's like had that really scary injury last year. I don't know if people remember that, but I think I was watching that game live, and I was like, dude, that looked like, and then obviously didn't move for a little bit, and I was like, that was genuinely a very concerning injury.
Yeah.
But he's fine. He's back and practicing, and that's tough because if he's tight end 1, Gerald Everett that is, then obviously getting the Chargers tight end 1 is great.
It's pretty good, yeah. For
they got
Mr. Irrelevant,
some other great options, but yeah, if that's your maybe second tight end or really taking a shot, and you're just streaming tight end, Everett could be all right.
Yeah. So thus concludes this mock draft. How you feel about your team? You got the waiting until round 5 to pick up running back 2. You think that paid off for you?
It's interesting because the running backs I think I was able to pick up kind of later were a little bit more helpful.
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt is a little bit of a savior. I have never once drafted Elijah Mitchell because he's in the dead zone, and I'm terrified of all running backs in this spot.
Right.
But with the drop of Trey Sermon, even though they do have that other rookie running back that they loved a lot, it's Elijah Mitchell still got the ball 200 times, had a decent amount of receptions, and is on a good running team, obviously. So running back is where I'm hurting, but Darrell Henderson, Kareem Hunt kind of help a little bit. But I can't pass up the receiver core that I got. It's just way too insane of a pretty good receiving threat that I have in those first 3 rounds or first 4 rounds. So it's interesting. Yeah, I've never, and this is my decision is like, would I have rather passed Devontae Adams to get like, I don't know, Aaron Jones or Saquon Barkley? It just doesn't feel good. And then in the 3rd round, I would have easily taken James Conner, but I'm not reaching for Travis Etienne or someone instead of Pittman. So it really just came down to what fell to me, and I just didn't like running backs that fell to me. So.
Yep. Well, thus concludes our draft. I like my roster. It could be worse, though. Your running back core could be like Team 11s with Tony Pollard, Melvin Gordon, running back 1, 2. Not great. Not great draft by Team 11. Just hope that you get some trade value out of that one. But, of course, let us know how you think we did in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you're watching this one live on Twitch, you were here. You saw it live. And if you missed it and you're on YouTube, then follow me on Twitch and make sure you get the notifications turned on so that you can see when I go live every single time. Maybe you could say you were here watching us make these stupid decisions like drafting not Jordan Love as my Mr. Irrelevant. Once again, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.